You get paid on Friday, open your investing app, and do the responsible thing. You throw a couple hundred into a fund, maybe a stock that's been all over your feed. The little line in the app wiggles up and to the right. You feel sort of proud, like a grown-up. Then you swipe over to your credit card app, and that balance has barely moved in months. The minimum hits. Most of it goes to interest. Next payday, you're right back where you started. A few hours later, HR emails you about your 401k and open enrollment. You swipe that away because it feels confusing. 10 minutes after that, your car makes a horrible grinding noise on the highway, and your plan is basically, please don't actually brake. Here's the wild part. A recent Federal Reserve survey found that only about 63% of adults say they could handle a $400 emergency with cash or its equivalent. That means almost 4 in 10 would have to borrow, sell something, or just not pay it. Federal Reserve 2025. And another study found the median emergency savings is just $600, and 21% of people have nothing set aside at all. Empower 2024. Yet a lot of those same people are buying stocks, crypto, ETFs, whatever shows up in their feed. If you keep going like that, you can invest for years, feel proud of yourself, and still be one layoff, one medical bill, or one transmission failure away from wiping out everything or falling deeper into debt. If you flip the order, every dollar gets a clear job. Your savings actually protect your investments instead of nuking them, and the banks and apps stop getting the best cut of your paycheck. My name is Joe, and I'm obsessed with how money actually works, not the hype, the order. So here's the big question I want to answer. What is the smartest step-by-step order to invest your money so that your next dollar does the most damage in your favor instead of the bank's? Quick thing before we really get into the latter. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not personal financial advice. I'm walking you through a framework based on research and my own experience so you can see how the incentives line up. This is education and entertainment, not a blueprint tailored to your life. So, if you're making big moves with real money, talk to a qualified professional who actually knows your situation and your numbers. Because you don't just have a money problem, you probably have an order problem. You're doing what you were told. You invest something every month. You don't ignore your future, but your net worth graph kind of just wobbles. The debt line goes sideways or creeps up. One surprise expense hits, and suddenly you're moving money out of that nice green investments number just to keep the lights on. It feels like trying to fill a bucket that's already leaking from 3 holes. High interest debt, surprise bills, and taxes and fees. On the surface, it sounds smart to invest early and often no matter what. But there's a catch. If the same paycheck is feeding both high interest debt and random emergencies, your money is sprinting in 2 opposite directions at once. You're not crazy. You're not lazy. The order is just working against you. Your broker makes money when you trade. Your card issuer makes money when you carry a balance. None of them are paid to show you, hey, if you just change the order, you'd need way fewer products from us. So, if the game isn't pick the perfect stock, what game are you actually playing with your money? The real game is not, what should I buy? The real game is asking, what should this next dollar do first? Every paycheck is just a pile of choices. The money internet trains you to ask one question. What's the best investment right now? That's why every app homepage is a giant buy button and a list of trending tickers. But the real question is way more boring and way more powerful. Given where I am right now, what is the highest impact job for my very next dollar? Because here's how the villain in this story works. Credit card companies, lenders, trading apps, they all profit when you either borrow out of order or invest out of order. They want you investing with a 22% credit card balance in the background because that 22% is their compound growth. They want you trading in a taxable account before you've touched the boring tax advantage stuff because taxes and fees are their quiet cut. So here's the map I'm going to walk you through. Fix the leaking bucket, emergency fund, and expensive debt. Grab the one boring work benefit that behaves like a cheat code. Use IRAs to dodge the fee trap. For the right people, use the weird little health account almost no one uses right. Then decide where taxable accounts and fun money actually fit, so you can keep some excitement without turning your future into a casino. Yes, you can still pick stocks or buy crypto if you want. There's a way to do it that doesn't wreck everything. We'll come back to that. Before any of that, though, you need one thing, a safety switch. An emergency fund sounds like the most boring idea on earth. Save some cash in a savings account. Wow, thanks, Dad. But think about what happens without it. Your tire blows, your pet gets sick, your phone dies for real this time, not just screen cracked. If you don't have a buffer, you have two options. Swipe a card and start paying double-digit interest, or sell your investments at the worst possible time. Both options punch a hole in the bottom of your bucket. An emergency fund is not about being perfect or hitting some magic number. It's about buying yourself the right to invest like a calm person instead of a panicked one. Remember that Empower stat. Median emergency savings around $600, and about a third of people saying they couldn't handle more than a $400 surprise without borrowing or selling something. Empower 2024. So, if you feel behind here, you're standing in a crowd. Here's how I think about it for most people. Stage 1. Scrape together your first $500 to $1,000 as fast as you reasonably can. Sell some stuff, cut a couple of obvious leaks, whatever it takes. That's your "my car made a noise" buffer. Stage 2. Build up to 1 month of core expenses. Not every latte. Rent, utilities, food, gas, minimum payments. The boring stuff. Stage 3. Slowly stretch that to 3 months as your situation stabilizes. More if your income is unstable or you're freelancing. Having some cash tucked away feels amazing, but there's a catch. If you keep endlessly padding that pile and never move on, safety quietly turns into an excuse to delay actual investing forever. So, yes, get the starter fund, then a few months of breathing room. But this is the launch pad, not the finish line. Once that safety switch is in place, we can finally go after the thing quietly eating your wealth from the inside. Let's talk about the villain hiding in your wallet: high-interest debt. Credit cards are the perfect example. Recently, the average interest rate on cards that carry a balance has been over 23%, and close to half of cardholders carry a balance from month to month instead of paying in full. That's not a few people making bad choices. That's the default. Here's how I want you to see it. Every dollar sitting on a high-interest balance is like an investment, just not for you. Quick math. If you owe $5,000 at 22% interest and your balance stays roughly the same, you're paying about $1,100 a year just to rent that money. Over 5 years, that's more than $5,000 in interest on top of the original $5,000. And that's before you add new charges. Another way to see it, say your minimum payment is 2% of the balance. On $5,000, that's $100. With a 22% APR, the interest for that month is around $92. Only about $8 is actually shrinking your debt. Making the minimum payment keeps the bank off your back, but there's a catch. Most of that money is just paying for time, not progress. So, the true cost of what you bought can quietly double on you. That's the minimum payment trap. It feels like you're doing something, but the math is stacked so that the bank gets compounding and you get stress. So, when you attack high-interest debt, I'm talking double digits, or roughly anything above, say, 8 or 9%. You're not falling behind on investing. You're grabbing one of the highest guaranteed returns you'll ever see. Paying off a card at 22% is like earning a risk-free 22% return. The stock market, over long history, has averaged closer to 10% before taxes and fees. And most real people don't even get that because of timing mistakes. Some of you are probably thinking, okay, Joe, but if I stop investing to kill this debt, aren't I missing years of compounding? I get that fear. The finance world has drilled "get into the market" into everyone's head. But if you're paying 20-something% to the bank and hoping to earn 7 or 8% in the market, you're compounding in both directions. Their direction wins. So here's the first big rule of the order. Build a starter emergency fund so you're not swiping a card for every flat tire. Then throw as much as you reasonably can at high-interest balances until they're gone, with one big exception. Let's talk about the most boring cheat code in personal finance: the employer match. Somewhere in your HR portal, there's a line about matching contributions. It might say something like, "We match 50% of your contributions up to 6% of your salary." That line is one of the only things in personal finance that behaves like a cheat code. In the US, a big majority of workers have access to some kind of retirement benefit at work, but a smaller chunk actually participate, and an even smaller group contributes enough to get the full match. That's a lot of free money left on the table. BLS and Vanguard summaries. Here's why this matters for our next dollar game. Let's say your employer matches 50 cents on the dollar up to 6% of your salary. If you make $50,000 and you contribute 6%, that's $3,000. They throw in another $1,500. You put in $3,000, they give you $1,500 instantly. That's a 50% return before the market does anything. Try getting that from a stock pick. So, even if you still have nasty credit card debt, there's a strong argument for at least contributing enough to grab that full match while you're paying the debt down aggressively with everything else. Yes, there's fine print, vesting schedules, limited fund menus, weird names you've never heard of. The underlying investments might be mediocre, but the match itself is separate from the plan quality. As long as the funds aren't outright disasters, that upfront boost usually outweighs the fee drag on that chunk of your money. So, the rule becomes, build that starter emergency fund, attack high-interest debt hard, but from the moment you start, grab every dollar of employer match you can, even while you're still paying down that debt. Once you're getting the full match and the worst debt is dying, that's when we step outside the workplace plan and use a different tool to dodge the fee trap. This is where IRAs come in. Think of your employer plan as the match machine and your IRA as the freedom account. A lot of workplace plans offer a limited set of funds, many of them actively managed, with higher ongoing fees. Meanwhile, in an IRA at a big low-cost provider, you can usually buy simple index funds that cost almost nothing each year. Those ongoing fees sound tiny, but over a 30 or 40-year working life, they make a huge difference. Quick math. Imagine you invest $10,000 a year for 30 years. If your investments average around 7% a year and your fund costs are near zero, you'd end up with roughly $945,000 before inflation. Drop that return by just 0.8 percentage points. Say you're paying around 0.85% a year in fees instead of 0.05%, and you end up closer to $819,000. That tiny-looking fee just cost you more than $120,000. A fund that charges a little more each year doesn't sound like a big deal, but over a long career, that little fee can quietly eat the difference between comfortable and I have options. This is why a common smart order for a lot of people looks like get the free employer match in your 401k or similar. Put extra retirement dollars into an IRA you control, where you can pick low-cost, broad index funds. If you still have more to invest after maxing the IRA, circle back and increase contributions to the employer plan. Inside both your IRA and your 401k, you might have a choice between traditional and Roth. Quick version. If your income is relatively low right now and you expect it to go up, Roth often makes sense. Pay the lower tax rate now, enjoy tax-free withdrawals later. If you're already in a high tax bracket, traditional might give you more relief today. If you're not sure, it's totally fine to split contributions and give future you options. And if you're thinking, cool, but my income isn't huge, remember, this ladder is about sequence, not flexing big numbers. 10% of your income in a smart order will beat 20% sprayed around at random. Speaking of taxes, there's a weird little account almost nobody uses to its full potential, the Health Savings Account, or HSA. If you're on a high-deductible health plan, you might have access to one. On the surface, HSAs look like a medical checking account. You contribute, swipe a card at the doctor, the money goes away. Underneath, they're one of the most powerful accounts in the system because they get 3 tax breaks. Contributions can be pre-tax or deductible, like a traditional IRA. The money can grow tax-free while it's invested. Withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are tax-free, even in retirement. That's triple tax advantage. As of 2024, HSAs held almost $147 billion across more than 39 million accounts, but only a minority of those accounts actually invest the balance instead of letting it sit in cash. Devenir, 2024 to 2025. Using your HSA like a swipe-and-go medical checking account feels convenient, but there's a catch. Every time you empty it, you're giving up years of tax-free growth that future you desperately needs. Quick math. If you put around $4,300 a year into an HSA for 30 years and invested at roughly 7% a year, you could end up with a little over $400,000 before inflation. Now compare that to healthcare costs in retirement. One recent estimate says a 65-year-old retiring today might need around $172,500 in after-tax savings just for healthcare and medical expenses over the rest of their life. Fidelity, 2025. So, for people who qualify and can afford to pay smaller medical bills out of pocket, an HSA can basically prepay a huge chunk of those future costs with tax-free money. The advanced move is contribute to the HSA. Invest the balance in low-cost funds once you hit any minimum. Pay current small medical stuff from your regular budget if you can. Keep the receipts. There's no time limit on when you reimburse yourself. Years later, you can pull money out tax-free to match those old receipts or to pay new medical bills. This is not for everyone. If you have high ongoing medical costs or can't handle a big deductible, a high deductible plan just to get an HSA can be a bad deal. If that's you, skip the HSA step. The regular retirement ladder still works. HSAs are an extra rung, not a requirement. Once you've got a real emergency fund, high interest debt gone or dying, the employer match, an IRA and low-cost funds, and if it fits, an HSA working in the background, then we finally turn the retirement dials up and talk about taxable accounts and fund money. This is the part of the ladder most people want to start with. At this stage, you increase contributions to your workplace plan beyond the match, up to whatever limit you're aiming for. Then send extra long-term money into a regular taxable brokerage account. Here's why taxable comes later in the order. Retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, HSAs, are tax advantaged. You either get a deduction up front, tax-free growth, tax-free withdrawals, or some combo. Taxable accounts are flexible, but you pay taxes on dividends and on gains when you sell. Quick math. Say you invest $10,000 every year for 30 years. If, over that stretch, you average about a 7% return in a tax-advantaged account, you might end up with roughly $945,000. If taxes and trading drag your effective return down to around 6% in a taxable account, you end up closer to $791,000. That's more than $150,000 difference, purely from tax drag and friction. So it's not that taxable accounts are bad. They're actually great for early retirement bridge money before you can touch some accounts penalty-free. Big goals that don't fit into retirement or HSA boxes. Extra investing beyond what tax-advantaged accounts can hold. It's just that if you have limited dollars, you want to fill the tax-favored buckets first. And this is where the fun lives too. I promised at the start you wouldn't have to give up all the exciting stuff. Opening a separate account for fun investing sounds harmless, but if you never cap it, the fun side can quietly swell until it's bigger than the boring stuff that actually builds your future. So here's the rule I like. Decide a small percentage of your overall investing, maybe 5 or 10%, that you're okay treating like a lab. Individual stocks, crypto, whatever you want to experiment with. The other 90 to 95% lives in diversified, boring stuff that doesn't depend on you being a genius. That way, you still get the joy of hunting for winners, but if those bets go badly, they don't take your retirement down with them. There's always that one comment. Joe, I actually enjoy picking stocks and flipping coins on crypto. Are you saying I have to stop? No, I'm saying you should quarantine it. Because the data is brutal, real-world investors tend to underperform the very funds they invest in. One Dalbar report found that in 2024, S&P 500 returned about 25%, while the average equity investor earned closer to 16.5%, a gap of more than 8 percentage points, mostly because people bought and sold at the wrong times. Dalbar, 2025. The more you treat your entire portfolio like a game, the more you risk turning your life into that underperformance chart. So, keep the game in a small sandbox. Let the rest of your dollars quietly do their job in the background. A couple of quick fears I know are still bouncing around. If I fix the order and finally start investing more, what if the market tanks right after? That fear never fully goes away. But when you've got an emergency fund and no high-interest debt, a drop in the market is mostly annoying, not life-ending, because you are not forced to sell at the bottom to pay for a crisis. You're investing regularly over time. Sometimes you're buying high, sometimes low. That's how it's supposed to work. What about my student loans? I usually think of debt in tiers. Tier 1, very high interest, like credit cards and personal loans in the mid-teens or higher. Kill these as soon as your starter emergency fund is in place and you're grabbing your match. Tier 2, medium interest stuff. Some private student loans, certain car loans. If the rate is around 6 to 7%, you might lean harder on paying these down before going all in on extra investing. Tier 3, lower interest, especially federal student loans with protections. Those can sit in the background while you work the rest of the ladder, as long as you're not letting them balloon. Honestly, I feel behind. I've been doing everything out of order for years. Is there even a point in fixing it now? Yes. Because the moment you fix the order, every new dollar stops reinforcing the old mistakes. You can't go back and unpay old interest, but you can decide that from the next paycheck on, Your money will stop sprinting in two directions and start pushing on the same wall. Let me leave you with two versions of you. Same income, same job, same city. Version A does what everyone around them does. They invest a little in whatever app is on their phone while carrying a 20-something% card balance. They never quite get around to a real emergency fund, so every unexpected bill sends them back to zero. They don't understand their employer match, so they either don't contribute or contribute just enough to feel better, but not enough to get the full free money. Tax-advantaged accounts are half used, taxable accounts are full of random picks, and there's no cap on fun. 20 years go by, and they've been investing the whole time, but most of the gains leaked out through interest, fees, and taxes. Version B makes a different set of quiet choices. They start with that tiny, ugly emergency fund. Maybe it's only $500 at first. They attack high-interest debt like it's their job, while still grabbing every dollar of employer match they can. When they're finally free from those double-digit rates, they funnel money into an IRA of low-cost index funds. If they qualify, they treat their HSA like a long-term investment, not a swipe card. They slowly crank up retirement contributions, then use taxable accounts for extra goals and early retirement flexibility. They keep a small, clearly capped side account for experiments so they don't feel deprived. Same income, same number of paychecks, completely different outcome. The difference isn't that version B found a secret stock. It's that they answered one boring question over and over. What should this next dollar do first? Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about your next paycheck, not your whole life, just the next one. If you're willing to actually fix your money order, kill high-interest debt and then invest on purpose, comment, pay off debt before investing, or something like that down below. That's your tiny contract with yourself, and it tells YouTube this is the kind of video it should push to people stuck in the same mess. And if you want me to break this ladder down for different incomes and countries in future videos, hit subscribe so you actually see it when it drops. So, here's your simple playbook. Give your next dollars a job in this order. Starter emergency fund, then a few months of core expenses. Wipe out high-interest debt while grabbing every dollar of employer match you can. Build up IRA contributions in low-cost, diversified funds. If it fits your life, use an HSA as a long-term healthcare weapon. Turn up contributions to your workplace plan. Then, and only then, pour extra into taxable accounts with a small, capped sandbox for fun bets. The system makes the backwards order feel normal because that's where the profit is. You paying interest, you overtrading, you leaking money to taxes and fees you never needed to pay. Once you understand the hidden catch baked into that system, and you start assigning every new dollar to the right step on the ladder, you're already doing money better than most people you know, even if your starting number in the app still feels small.